Welcome to another episode of Racer TV's Behind the Bars, where we talk about old races and bench race just like you would, with one key difference. We actually have people who are in the race and winning the race as part of these shows. I'm Jason Wygant, your host. We'll bring in our usual cavalcade of analysts. I'll start with Jared Bolton, or Bolton as we like to call him. This is going to be the 2010 Snowshoe Gncc. A lot of money on the line, a totally unique track. Bolton, what was your role way back here 10 years ago?
This is part of why I picked this race for this episode.
Okay.
This was the last GNCC I attended where I wasn't working. So this is sentimental to me in a way.
The last good one they ever ran.
Right, exactly. This is kind of sentimental to me because this is the last time I wasn't like at the end of the weekend going, all right, kind of ready to go home now. At the end of the weekend, I was going, man, that was awesome. Let's keep going. Let's do another race. So this is an exciting race. Everything about it's awesome. And, Snowshoe in general is just a really cool event.
Yep. Yeah, totally unique as far as GNCCs go. Griff Cotter, we got you on this one. Now, you're actually behind the scenes with us in every episode of this show, but people don't normally see you. So we're going to bring you to the front lines this time. It's a bit of a scramble to make this happen. I'm sure it looks easy. Just give everybody on a Zoom call, but it's not quite that simple.
Yeah, getting pulled off the bench this week. I don't know if we'll make it stick, if it'll be a permanent thing, but happy to be on here today. And man, what a race at Snowshoe. It's near and dear to my heart, being in the mountain state of West Virginia, and looking forward to revisit with you guys.
All right, and we got our podium guys from that race. So a little, where are they now? We can catch up with these dudes. I'll start with Jesse Robinson because we're working left to right on your screen here. Jesse, we still see around every once in a while the races hanging out. But what do you got going, first of all, these days?
Oh, just raising 3 kids.
Nice.
And, started an inflatable bounce house business, and that thing's going off. But other than that, just still here working at the shop with my dad.
You're raising more than 3 kids. You're raising like everybody's kids with the inflatable bounce houses, right?
Yeah.
So Snowshoe 2010, you're in the battle for the win there, almost got it. So does this one stick out in your memory?
This is a sore spot. Honestly, anybody other than Nate winning this thing, because I was a Nate Canny fan, would have been a whole lot worse. But like I say, if I had to get beat by anybody, it would be Nate. But,
okay.
Other than that, like I say, I know what I did. We'll get to that part into the show. But like I say, I knew I had it in the bag. I just got caught loafing.
Man. All right, let's swing it over to Nate Canny. So we haven't hung out in a while. You're a New York guy, so we don't see you hanging out at the races down south or anything like that. But certain races, I feel like the big ones each year, Unadilla, Ironman, Snowshoe. Nate, it always seemed like you showed up for those big ones. So does this one stick out, getting a victory at Snowshoe?
Yeah, this one sticks out a lot for me because, at that point in my racing career, in that race in specific, it was like, I really showed up at that race, staking a claim to it and being pretty bold about it. And, it sticks out a lot in my memory because I think a lot of people recognize that confidence. And there was even some people that kind of had come over and were trying to get in my head before the race, and just the whole story about every bit of it sticks out. So it was a significant win,
That's cool. And then we'll send it over to Chris Bach, also on the podium that day. So Bach, you were close to a bunch of wins in GNCC. Does this one stick out for you to try to be in contention here?
It sticks out, but maybe not so much for the win thing. This was my rookie year, so everything was coming at me pretty quick, and a lot of good memories from that year. And I think this race and Unadilla, I was probably more prepared for those 2 races than any of the other ones. I'd spent a ton of time up at Nate's prior to both races, and we just spent a lot of time riding together and training in the rocks. And I went and rewatched this before we did this. I can most certainly tell, based on the last couple of times I remember racing Snowshoe, my comfort was definitely a little bit better in 2010. That's for sure.
You're wearing the Nate Canny jersey today. I see this.
That's right. Dug it out of my storage so I could do this thing here.
Well, how about this? So Nate, we've got 2 guys. The other 2 guys here on the podium are both Canny fans, apparently. We've got this established.
Yeah, it's pretty flattering, that's for sure. Especially when I haven't really been around the sport or the industry in so long, it's like it's a pretty warm welcome. So
yeah. So what are you doing these days, Nate?
I do commercial real estate investing and consulting. And, I didn't get directly into this, but I started investing in real estate right away when I was done racing. And, by a couple of years later, I was doing it full time. and it's great. My body's not broken anymore, and I have a home life, so it's great.
It's funny,
right.
we always threaten about getting a real job, and it sounds like you went out there and did just that.
Yeah, it's tough when I had to stop racing before I was, mentally before I was done. I still had, for about 5 years after I was done racing, I still had the mentality that I was 60 days away from being able to show up and win. And as long as I felt that way, I knew that I couldn't ride bikes at all and I couldn't go to the races because it just wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, was race. But I still wanted to win. I still wanted to prove that I could win. So I kind of just said to myself the whole time, if I put the same effort into something else, I'll do equally well. And, that's kind of how I got here, but it's also why I haven't been there.
Are you past the point now? Could you actually come hang out and it wouldn't be like some deep emotional scar now?
Oh, I would love to go hang and I could totally ride. And no part of me thinks that I could win a race with 60 days prep anymore. And,
okay.
With how fast some of these guys are going, I don't think I could ever win a race again at all, nor would I want to. But yeah, now I'm at a point where it would be fun. So.
All right, maybe we'll get you guys back out. We'll have a little reunion. So what do you think, Griff? Is it time to run the footage? Time to roll the show?
Let's do it.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Racer TV. This is a very special edition.
All right, time for me to talk over myself here because I'll do a better job today than I did 10 years ago. I'll go with Jesse. I'll go with Jesse. Just explain why this snowshoe race is so totally different. The length of the track and starting in a hard paved road and all that stuff. Just illustrate that a little bit for us.
Well, you don't get the same repetitive, beat up track. The track's rough, but it's not the same type of rough as a typical GNCC. It's had half the laps on them, but I personally enjoy the longer lap better because I don't do that as well in traffic as other people, but I like a cool track, but that's why I do better there, just a longer lap, I believe.
So they line up here top 5 in points. It's unique to Snowshoe, and what also is unique here is that none of the guys are on the podium. We're on the front row. Nate, were you worried about that at all? Did that mean anything, or are you like, row 2, here I am, you're getting a good jump? Were you worried about not being on row 1? Did it matter?
No, it was an advantage. That was like, if I could have started even the 3rd row or 4th row, might have even been nice, but the 2nd row was better than the 1st for us.
So we got 250 guy, it's Caleb Russell, but back then XC2 guy leading the way. And then Josh Strang was the points leader. He and Mullins on the number 3 Yamaha are kind of battling for the points lead. So Nate, you've already worked your way up. Nate, what do you think of the track here at Snowshoe? We heard Jesse's thoughts. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I agree with everything what Jesse said, but in addition, this particular year, it was a really, really technical, demanding, challenging course. Which was great. Sometimes Snowshoe was kind of, frankly, just fast and dangerous and it avoided all the good stuff. But this year it was really hard and that was right up my alley. So it was good. It was really good for, obviously, all 3 of us.
Well, that didn't take long. Got into the lead here. Nate, where are you in the career trajectory at this point? You're still factory KTM guy at this point. Is there pressure to go out and perform?
Yeah, actually, at this point in the year, there was a lot of pressure because, KTM was kind of cutting the budget year after year. And at that point, there was a lot of guys who wanted my spot on the team and they would have probably taken half my salary. So it was like either a race to the top or a race to the bottom,
Yeah, so getting a win. Did you kind of circle this as this is a good track for me? I want to make it happen today?
Well, going into this race, I had a lot of mechanical failures already that year. I was really behind the 8 ball. And so I went into this race, really motivated and angry about the way things were going. So I had trained extraordinarily hard for this one.
And then I see this big, tall guy coming up in 2nd place. Is that you, Bach?
That was me. That's right. Trying to chase down Nate.
Bach, so it's your rookie year in the class. When you get up front like this and you're trying to chase down Nate, and then the guys that are in the points lead and the guys who won the races earlier in the season are back there, are you thinking about that as like, okay, I'm running up front for the overall and I'm a rookie? Does that run through your mind at all, or are you just trying to negotiate the track and not thinking about that stuff?
No, I actually think that I thought about this too the other day. It's probably one of my biggest advantages this year is I didn't grow up racing GNCCs. My first real year was 2009. And then I came into this year and I didn't know any of the guys. I didn't really care to know any of the guys. And I think Nate and I actually got along in that regard. Everyone was kind of afraid of Nate being this outspoken New Yorker. And, he didn't really like everybody. I didn't really like anybody. And we became friends over that. And I think in this scenario, all I wanted to do was just ride my dirt bike, navigate. And I knew if I could stay on Nate, I'd be pretty safe through the whole day. And we had the advantage of being on the second row. So by the time we got up 1-2, I mean, we had a pretty nice time gap.
How did you guys get to be 1-2 this quickly? I don't know how much stuff maybe the TV show missed, but and there was Strang here going down. But you guys essentially went from 5th and 6th to 1st and 2nd on the track almost instantly. Do either of you guys remember how that came to be?
Yeah, I remember we strategized this whole thing with the time gap. All you have to do is catch them. So we were both confident in our prep. So all we had to do was catch them, and if we caught them, then we knew that our skills and our training would prevail over those guys. So you'll watch, and I mean, there's times where we're literally just idling around the track, and we were pulling huge time on them.
Man, but there wasn't like they all got stuck and they all crashed in one spot, and you passed 5 guys pretty quickly. Wasn't anything like that?
No, it was also just, we had spent 3 weeks riding stuff like this together.
Yeah.
And we knew all we had to do was close a 5-second gap to the guys who had to read trail, which was going to be, they were going to last a quarter mile before we were on them. And then by the time we got to them, Chris and I knew that we were going to not necessarily work together, but we weren't going to race each other when it's a 3-hour race. And if he's right on my wheel or if I'm right on his, we were going to kind of zap, 2 or 3 guys at a time. So as soon as we caught them, it was really apparent that a lot of the riders weren't necessarily kind of nailing their lines like they wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can sit patiently and ride for fun and let the other guys struggle. And then, by the time we go around them and we keep going, it's like, you could tell it was probably kind of demoralizing for the other guys because we're having fun and we're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees, and the guys are like, you could tell everybody had arm pump and didn't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I think
just,
too in this.
Go ahead. Yep.
There's I remember training for this race. Everyone was talking about how rough and everyone needs to soften up their suspension for all the rocks and all this stuff. I actually remember I made my stuff way stiff. And I made my forks just crazy stiff, and same with my shock. And I watch these guys, and you see everybody's forks they're compressing and they're deflecting off all these rocks and stuff. And one of the things they taught me is we weren't going around the rocks; we were going up and over the ones that everyone was scared of. So it was kind of an unorthodox approach to the track, but it kept me from deflecting. I was able just to literally crawl up over the top of stuff that everyone else was going around. And Nate had that advantage too, just being an exceptional rock rider.
All right, we got pit stops going on here. I think that's UKJT. Mullins has pulled in. You guys are already through, still in the lead. So Jesse Robinson, where are you at this point in the race?
I'm with Mullins and Jimmy and Chris and Thad, but
yeah, there's Thad pitting. Yep.
I stopped gas, and my dad's like, "You're with the lead group," and I'm like, and I just didn't, I was just kind of like, I thought I was just kind of hanging on at the moment. I never was a real fast starter, and once we got a half hour or so into the race, I was like, I'm starting to catch my breath. The arms were loosening back up and everything. And, I'm just starting to get comfortable out there. I'm with Charlie, and I'm like, me and Charlie rode a lot together too. And I'm like, I'm gonna hang on here till I get my breath, the breathing right and everything. And like I say, I just, Charlie started making mistakes, and I was like, well, I'm faster here, and just kind of started going at it on my own. And like I said, then I come around, my dad's like, you're in second behind Nate.
You're in the hunt.
Yep.
Yeah. This is exactly what we're talking about here, guys, isn't it? There's Mullins making the mistake. Nate, you're looking good, getting in the lead, and same thing for you. So, yeah, not making the mistakes seems to make a huge difference. Look, Mullins still struggling. Wow.
Was this the year that they had that long, slow, very gradual, rocky climb in the back that everyone got stuck on?
Yeah, that's where me and you and I remember being with you and we made that big jump around like that.
That's right.
There's 8 people. We went the long way around that actually.
That was my demise. I actually tried to make a move on Nate there, and right here, I'm way back now. I actually got hung up there. I ended up having to push my bike all the way up the hill, and Nate just
I went the long way
up that thing.
around that. Because Nate was so fast on this side of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
This is another one of those classic, the camera doesn't know justice. That hill looks like it's nothing there, but it's super steep, and it was the lift line on an abandoned ski slope. So that's like the steepest part of that side of the mountain was coming up that right there.
My 250 realized that here in a little bit.
Yeah, so Jesse, that's odd. You'll see the green number plate backgrounds on your bike. You ended up back in that class, or actually, you had skipped that class originally, I think, right? How did you end up in a different class than the other guys after you were in the big class for a while? How did it all come to be?
Kawasaki pulled the plug on their stuff, and say I was, like look at this, Mullins was out of ride,
Yeah, these are tough days.
Champion guy, and then Strang wins a championship, and then a couple of weeks later he's out of a ride.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just kind of floating around, because there's good guys without rides, and I was just doing one last hurrah tour on this year. I'm going to go home and hang it up after Ironman.
Yeah, 2010, it was like, whatever, say 08, 09, the economy starts struggling, and everybody's like, it'll just give it time, it'll come back. And then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And honestly, man, I'm still not sure if it's back for off-road where it was in, say, 2005. But it was sad to hear that you basically were out on you had been a Cowie guy for how long, Jesse?
I started Team Green in 03, 04.
Yeah.
And then rode Cowies till 08. And then 09, I finished up I rode an old Cowie and then finished up on the Husenbergs. And then 10, I bought 2 KTMs and raced this year.
I want to talk about the purse, by the way. These were a couple of years where they put a huge purse. Was it 10 grand to win, Nate? Was that what it was? Something like that?
It was 10,000 for the win from Gncc, plus whatever we could muster up as a bonus from the teams. So it was the biggest purse of the year.
Yeah. So I hate to rub it in here, Jesse, but that would have been nice.
Oh, definitely.
Is that UKJT? Is that Jason Thomas? He's in the hunt too, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was there for a little bit.
What I feel like we're seeing here is, correct me if I'm wrong, Bach, you were kind of talking about this. Is this track so different that you just end up seeing it playing to strengths of different guys that you don't normally see maybe at some of the other races? Because Jason Thomas won a lot of titles in XC2, but this is one of his best runs up front for an overall. So are we kind of seeing that, you think, a little bit?
Yeah, I think Nate alluded to it earlier that this is probably the last year, I think, of the track being extremely technical.
Mm-hmm.
If Nate were to go and see the most recent years Snowshoe, he probably wouldn't even recognize the mountain. He's been gone so long. But this was much different. It was a different strategy, different mindset, different skill set also regarding the whole thing. So for sure, play into strengths, but a little bit of luck too. There were things that you could do absolutely everything right and still get hung up for something out of your control. So just had to play it smart, and we didn't attack this as a race until the end. We just kind of, like Nate said earlier, just kind of rode around, and it really had fun riding the course, and I think that was a huge advantage for us.
I can remember passing at least a few guys where I knew I had opportunities to pass them everywhere, but I knew that there was really difficult sections coming up, and I remember specifically waiting for particular sections to make the pass so that it could be, kind of mentally debilitating to the other guys rather than them made a mistake, and it was like, I think for Jesse and Chris and I, the race really didn't start till that last hour, but it was like a really fun trail ride, and it was sort of, I've said this before, but it was sort of a game of chess, if I could pass Mullins or Whibley on the inside of a turn, that's one thing, but if I could wait till a section where I knew that they've been struggling every lap, and then I could go by them and put 30 seconds on them and 100 feet, that was a lot better, because it's like, you know, when you start seeing the other guys and it looks easy to them, you start questioning your bike and yourself. So, you know, there was a little bit of that going on.
You know, sitting here listening, it sounds like you guys did a lot of homework for this race at Snowshoe, like the scouting report that you guys had, and you know what you were getting yourself into. Did you guys do that for every race, or was it just this Snowshoe event?
For me, a little bit some races, but for the most part, it was just this one. And, you know, most of the other races were sort of cookie cutter. You know, they were all very similar.
Sure.
The terrain here being mountainous and rocky was similar to home for me. So there was an advantage there where, you know, the Carolina races and the stuff down south, it was sort of just like, you know, 10-mile motocross track where, you know, it's kind of tight and, you know, what could you really do? You know what I mean? It really kind of put us all together on a really level playing field. But when we would come here, you could really put the effort in and create an enormous gap for yourself.
Jess, it's a heck of a battle you guys are putting on. You and Nate, you guys are going at it.
Yeah, actually, the side there where Nate just got around me, he was so fast over there. It was a lot. It was rocky, but it was, you know, a lot, you used the word flat and slick. And like I said, I had my hands full over there, but actually, this side of the mountain, I think I could actually had the upper hand on Nate a little bit, just being on a lighter bike and a little bit more nimble. But
I remember that too.
Like I say, and there was a section after there was a big mud hole in the power line that I don't know what I did the first lap, but it's just like I had
that section was so bad.
Straight line through the whole section. You know, it was probably 2 or 3 miles, and like I say, I could put Nate on the ropes there, but easily crossed over to the other side of the mountain. It was just you could like feel him put that chain around my neck and start pulling me back in.
That shot. Do you guys remember that downhill? Do you guys remember that downhill that was just brutally steep and brutally slippery?
Yeah.
And I think the three of us were the only ones who straight lined it. Everybody else was turning left and turning right, and there was just a queue of like 50 lappers. And I feel like I remember a lot of the other pro guys just getting in the queue with the lappers because it was so scary to go straight down, but we were going straight down through the ferns, and it was a really cool feeling.
Yeah, the shot that they just had of you, Nate, when you clean that section feet on the peg, that was, I mean, that's enough to keep me retired.
Hey, Bolton, talk about the challenge then of making this snowshoe track. You know, these guys obviously like it the way it was here in 2010 and the previous years. How hard is it to make it like that and change it up and all those things?
It's incredibly difficult there. If I could have it my way, 100% my way, it'd be like this every year. But unfortunately, you know, there's a lot more factors that go into the snowshoe course than just us, you know, going out and laying it out. There's certain places we can't go anymore where we went at one time. Stuff that we did years ago, you can't do anymore. Just the series has grown. There's so many riders now, and you'll spend half the day just trying to get people out of the woods just because they weren't fully prepared for the event. But overall, snowshoes one of my personal favorites. You know, the mountain itself being so rugged and gnarly, it's just an awesome place to have a race. Even if we can't do a super gnarly course every time we're there, there's still plenty of tough stuff there. And you know, it may not always be a 2010 snowshoe, but every year we're there is definitely interesting.
I came here with only one thing in mind, and that was.
Can we hear this interview?
And I knew I could. I was confident because I put so much time in, and every day I was getting better and better and making the bike better. So when I got here, you know, I knew it was just up to me to put a good race in. I knew I was capable of winning. It was just up to me to actually perform well for the whole 3 hours. And you know, luckily I pulled it together today. I closed the deal. So.
Well, you get 10 grand. What are you going to do with that?
I'm gonna go hide it before it's all gone. I'm gonna go hide it in my savings account.
All right. Well, congratulations.
All right. Thank you.
Nate, if you wouldn't have won this race after all the people you told you were going to win, you might have been forced into retirement in 2010.
If I would have known that I was in first, and Nate wouldn't have won it anyway.
I remember getting interviewed by Rodney, I think, that morning, and Rodney asked me what I think, and I said, I think the race is already mine. And Just nobody else here realizes it yet, but they're just here fighting for second, you know. And I really meant it, you know. That's how I felt. But when I walked away from that, I said, all right, well, you know, I basically just clocked in, you know, like I'm on the job from here on. And I remember that one of the funniest things was that year Strang was riding really, really well when he was riding well, but the team was kind of flaky. And I remember Rodney Smith had come over to talk to me before the race. And, you know, I was thinking, oh, maybe the team's got some budget, or maybe they want me for next year or something like that. And then I figured out in about 15 seconds that he was just, in my opinion, he was just trying to kind of get in my head. And he's like asking me, he said, I can't believe you're going to race without straps on your front fender and your back fender. What are you going to do when you got to pull your bike out of the mud? And I said, I'm not going to get stuck in the mud, so I don't need straps, you know? And he looked at my back tire, which at that time was a tire that was discontinued from Dunlop. And I think I got like the last one in the States and I had to buy it. But I had figured out that if I ran a 19-inch Moose in a 18-inch tire with that old model tire, that it was the best one in the rocks. It would last the whole race and I could get a little more compliance. And I had put 3 weeks of testing into this thing, so I knew it was going to work. And Rodney goes, I can't believe you're going to use that tire. That tire is the worst. And we use this tire and we use it everywhere. And we use a 19 and it's just fine in the rocks. And I think by the time Rodney walked away, I just said to myself, if he felt the need to come over and try to get in my head, I think I'm in pretty good shape here.
Oh, that is gold. That is gold. Oh, the mind games. I love it.
And you know, the sad part is I didn't do any extra prep for the race. I didn't put any clicker on the suspension. I ran the same exact tires I run at any other race. I ran the same setup in Florida as I did at Snowshoe.
Wow.
That year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember Nate, at the time Nate lived in a townhouse in New York there, and he had a single car garage, and we had our bikes in there. I think Douglas was with us maybe that year, maybe not. And the garage was loaded. Every day before we'd go ride, Nate would be changing tires or changing bibs or modifying a bib. And you ended up, I think it was a 756 maybe.
It was a Dunlop 756.
Yeah, 756, and nobody could get them. And it was wild. And I remember there was this year was pretty crazy. There were a handful of races where you and I didn't wear camelbacks, and that really freaked a lot of people out too. That we just show up to the line 3 hours. I know Unadilla was one the race after this. Neither one of us raced with camelbacks, and you almost ended up winning that one. But that was a fun year, man. That was good.
Yeah.
So tell me how the race all played out. So Jesse, how did it go? You at one point thought, or you didn't know you were in the lead, but you didn't know. Tell me how this all played out at the end.
So Nate passed me that you see in the video up the hill. You know, we duck over to that's the end of the side that where he's just, you know, like a bolt of lightning. We cross over the hill and, we're together. And, we're probably back and forth 3 or 4 times. And we get down to this power line mud hole. And, they all remember you could cut right and go around it. And you come back up onto like the dam in this little reservoir and then right back into this tight section where I was fast. Well, the last lap, Nate's in front of me going through there. And he goes like he's going down that mud hole power line. And I'm like, I've not been there the whole day. I'm not, like I say, I'm running on crumbs here trying to get to the races. So I'm like, $5,000. I'm going to go a long way around. I'm going to win my class, collect that money. So I go around and like I said, but I've pinned it around it. I've given it everything I've had. And as I come out of there's a guy on a 450 KTM just tooling right across this pond. And like I say, and I hit this tight section that I was fasting all day. And like I say, I had, if Nate had a lead on me, I caught him in there. And I gave it everything I had through this section. I was like, we're 2 miles from the finish line. I didn't catch him, bring it home. And I ducked the front end on this little slick off camber. And it's either turn left and go through a big mud bog. So I'd stand my bike up and have to walk around it because it's slick. And next thing I know, Nate bumps into me. And he just wiggles by while I'm trying to get to the high side of my bike. But if I would have known from a pit board that I was in the lead, you talking about bonsai in a mud hole. Now, I would have sent that thing right through the middle of it, but not knowing that, because like I say, I just there again. That's the lesson I learned: never to count your chickens or count yourself out. But I think Nate neglected. He got in there and talked himself out of going through and turned around and went the way around that power line mud hole. And like I say, I took my time because I knew Chris was not right there on us. And I was like, well, I'm in second. We literally had a road bed. It was the road bed across the top of the mountain back to the finish line is all we had. And I just had tucked the front in and wasn't in an emergency to get up because I thought I was done. I thought I was done beat at the time, but comes to find out Nate was behind me.
So how does it work on the track to not, and Nate, maybe you can explain that. How did you guys not see each other to know where you guys were? Is it just because the lines get so wide, or how's that all work?
I knew where I was because
you knew you were second.
Because he went through the mud hole.
The track had basically two routes that would go far enough away from each other.
I see
one another. And I was taking the straight route, which was pretty risky because it was such bad mud. But when I had started into it in the lead, I had gotten into it and realized it probably wasn't a good idea. And so I had doubled back. I had turned around, decided to go around instead of taking the risk so close to the end of the race. And I decided, I'd rather bet on myself to sprint and catch back up to Jesse than, get buried in the mud and give it up to him right away. So I had doubled back to go around. And when I had him up the trail, I don't know what the time gap was, but I could see him.
I think Bieran told me it was 20 seconds.
Yeah, it might have been 10 or 20. I don't know what it was, but I could barely see him up ahead. I wasn't out of sight yet, but I could tell by the way he was riding. I didn't know that he did not know he was in the lead, but I could tell that he'd turned the afterburners on and he was making a run for it. And at that point in time, I had ridden so calmly and confidently the whole day that I didn't panic. I still felt the race was mine, but I knew that we were in a part of the track that suited Jesse really well. But I just wasn't in a headspace where I was going to panic or take any unnecessary risk. I was just going to keep riding the way I was because it worked so well. And I had closed the gap up to be about maybe 5 seconds or something like that. But it was at the point there was such little space left in the race that with that 5 second gap, if Jesse would have made it another 20 feet without getting stuck, it would have been a 60-mile-an-hour race for about another 2 or 3 miles. It would have been really wild. And, within that 20 feet was, that was where it was going to get real. So I had been calm and I was mentally preparing to really turn it up on the fast stuff. But if it would have gone that next 20 feet and Jesse didn't get stuck, I would have been, with a sense of urgency that it was going to be real quick for me to get it back. And one of the reasons why I kind of felt okay, like, hey, it's better to wait, was because at that point we started going so fast that you really couldn't manage and control what line you were going to end up in, so we were skating and deflecting off a lot of stuff at that speed. And I still wanted to be, a rider with precision that was going to pick and choose where I ended up. And Jesse had a little bit lighter bike and he had some fire in his veins and he was riding hot. And, I wasn't in that mentality yet. I was going to save it for where we could do that without getting stuck. So if that wouldn't have happened there, I would have gotten some high blood pressure pretty quick.
Like I say, when I had tucked the front in, I had done said before that, I was like, I didn't catch him, I was chasing a ghost Nate up the trail. It's like, I didn't catch the guy in there. If I can't catch him through there, that there's nowhere for a mistake from here on in to catch him. And I'd say I tipped over there at that mud hole and he wasn't there at that last mistake spot. And I was like, and then here he comes behind me. And like I say, it was just, my kicker was I couldn't get my foot onto the kicker. So I had to roll off into that mud, get my bike started. And like I say, it just, it was a mistake of my own for not being 100% aware of what I was doing or where I was at. Like I say, I should have just pretended like I still could have caught him. But like I say, it was the bonehead mistake on my end.
Bach, how did it end up for you? You were with Nate for a lot of the race, and it looked like you were in a bit of a comeback mode there at the end. So how did it turn out for you, Chris?
Yeah, I think the spot that Jesse and I were talking about earlier is the hill that we had to climb probably wasn't a 3% grade. I mean, it was barely a climb at all, but the whole thing was just these black slick rocks. And what was a huge advantage for us at the beginning of the race, I think I actually maybe tried to make a move around Nate or something. And I remember being hung up there, and I had to get off and push my bike. And it was a huge loss of time. So where I made up all that time, I literally gave it all back. And the rest of the day, I still had the same idea that as long as I kept my bike moving and I tried to clean every section, then not just bonsai them like Nate was saying, but be methodical and literally just clean them. Just every time I get to a tough one, just go through, make sure I didn't take my feet off the pegs if I didn't have to. And right up until like the last hour, I started pushing and ended up getting back around all those guys. They were fading, and those Nate and JR were gone. They were racing each other, and I was kind of in no man's land, just playing catch up. So would have been great if Nate would have went through the pond, got stuck, and JR would have spent a little more time trying to start his bike. It probably could have turned out a little better for me, but not so much.
What do you say, Bolton? That's a pretty good one. Were you racing that day, by the way?
No. Actually, that hill that I was talking about earlier that didn't look that steep, I can pick myself out kind of standing there with actually Rob Mitchell that does a lot of video production stuff. We were doing a little website back then called Off-Road Junkies. We were just going to the races and doing stupid stuff. So I was there hanging out, enjoying the race. It's funny, going back now and doing what I do. I can watch so much of that and know, I know where that's at. I know where that's at. And it's really cool to be able to watch this. And, it's 10 years ago and still be able to pick out some of the same sections of trail we still use now.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, this is awesome. Last guy, Bach, what are you into these days? I know I saw you at the races with Hoosier for a while. We know Nate's doing real estate. Jesse's running inflatable jump houses for kids. What do you got going on there, Chris?
Yeah, so industry related, I do the off-road development and help with the motocross stuff for all the new Hoosier motocross line. Mm-hmm. And then for the longest time, I've been involved with KTM and production testing and suspension development for them. So I still get to ride. I still get to go to the races. I don't ride as much as I'd like to, for sure, but I do get to go to the races, which is nice every once in a while and participate. But I'm actually in almost the exact same realm as Nate, also commercial real estate, which is ironic. A little bit different capacity. Nate does a little bit more consulting side of it, and I do a little bit more brokerage and property management. But yeah, it's I think one of my biggest downfalls was when I was racing. I always knew there was going to be an end, and Nate was a mentor of mine when I turned pro. He was the first guy that actually came up and congratulated me after when I almost won Florida that first round out. And after that, we just became buds. And so watching him at that point in his career, he was in a tight spot because budgets were being cut, and he had just gotten back from Europe a year or two prior and was riding really well, and was his deals and his contracts and his career was not lining up the way it should have been based on his riding. It was just a matter of the economy at the time and things falling out, and Strang was a victim of that too. So I always knew that there was going to be an end, and I just needed to ride the wave as long as I could. So I was always planning for this. I've been interested in real estate a long time. A family member of mine's big into investing, and so I always had a plan, and I was never racing to lay it all on the line like I think some of these guys are now, which may have hurt me in my racing career, but set me up okay for a life afterwards, which is good. So
you're really saying it's a coincidence that you guys are in the same field? There hasn't been any advice or consulting back and forth between either Nate or Chris here that just worked out that way?
Ironically, after Nate retired, he went off and did his thing, and I was doing real estate and stuff too. But we probably didn't talk for maybe a year or something like that, and he was doing his thing, and I was still racing. So I kind of got into it more on house flipping and residential investment, things like that, and started off down the commercial path, and just got to talking with Nate about what he was doing in real estate. I knew he was in real estate, but at the time I didn't know in what capacity. It's a huge industry. And he's like, oh yeah, he's doing this commercial thing. And then once we found that out, yeah, for sure, there's obviously been some more mentorship through that process too. And I went up and spent some time with Nate last year, and yeah, we talk real estate now and bicycles and markets and all kinds of stuff. Not so much racing, but still good buds.
All right, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, the memories live on. All right, that's our show. Griff, what do you think? We good to go here?
Yeah, really great show, guys. Thanks for coming on. Real quick for Nate, where does this snowshoe victory stack up in career achievements for you?
It's probably third, more or less, third, fourth, something like that. Even though it was a big and a significant win. My first win at Unadilla was really kind of stands out a lot, simply because Juha was there. And Juha is, for anybody who ever got to race him or know him, he's kind of, he's as much the GOAT of off-road as there ever really was, and being able to race against him. And I had a kind of a glimpse of Juha going his fastest, which I don't think really many people ever got to see, but I got to see him turn it on for a moment, and that sticks out. And then the Ironman wins. I had 3 Ironman wins, and every single one of those was like really awesome. So I guess they're all pretty similar, but I'd probably say those Ironman wins were always probably the bigger ones.
But this one paid the best, at least.
Yeah.
This one paid the best. But, one of the things I loved about those 3 wins at Ironman is I won it differently every time. And, different bikes entirely. I led one front to back. I waited till the last lap on another one. And then, when I won it the first time on the Yamaha, it was sort of like I just won Unadilla. And, there was a lot of people who kind of acted like my win at Unadilla was a fluke because it was in my home state. So I was still pretty hot to do it. And, that track was probably always one of my favorites because it was just so fast and so just fast and awesome. And the ruts and the traction and it's the end of the year, the leaves were off the trees. You could get really good eyesight. And, those were probably the bigger ones for me, I would say.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Heck, good career for all you guys. That was awesome bench racing here. The best part is that you guys remember every single inch of this race from 10 years ago, a 27-mile track. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, yep. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Hey, I know you're all retired now in your own way, but at least we'll stoke the old memories a little bit here for the fans who I can't believe 10 years have passed that quickly, but we'll remind them real quick. So thanks for joining us, boys.
All right.
Thanks, Weege.
Thanks.